What happens when management looks at a young, talented roster and decides that skill alone is enough? When you stop being patient with development and start demanding that your team gets tougher, meaner, and ready for the kind of playoff battles that separate contenders from pretenders. Welcome back, folks. It's Saturday, January 11th, 2026, and we got an absolute bombshell to discuss. According to a report from Eklund, Kent Hughes isn't just shopping for one veteran addition. He's in active discussions with the Calgary Flames to acquire both Nazem Kadri and Blake Coleman in a package deal. This isn't about adding depth anymore. This is about fundamentally changing the identity of the Montreal Canadiens. Let me be clear about what's driving this. The report states there's pressure from above to win real playoff games, not just make appearances. And if you watched Montreal's playoff exit against the Capitals last season, you know exactly what that means. The Canadiens got physically dominated. They got bullied. They got pushed around. And management is absolutely done watching that happen. This is a response. This is Kent Hughes saying, enough is enough. We're not getting pushed around anymore. Let's start with Nazem Kadri, because bringing him to Montreal will be one of the most fascinating storylines of the season. This is a guy who spent years tormenting Habs fans as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was the agitator, the pest, the player everyone in Montreal loved to hate. And now, he might be wearing the blue Blanc Rouge. But here's why it makes perfect sense. Kadri doesn't just produce offensively. He drags teams into the kind of ugly, grinding games that define playoff hockey. He gets under opponents' skin. He takes the tough matchups. He absorbs the difficult minutes. He protects his teammates. And most importantly, he's got that edge, that meanness, that willingness to do whatever it takes to win. Nick Suzuki is a fantastic player and a great captain, but he's a technical leader. He leads by example with his skill and his work ethic. What Montreal needs is someone who brings a different kind of leadership. The kind that looks across the ice and tells the opposition, "You're not running our young stars tonight. You want to get physical? Let's go." That's Nazem Kadri. That's exactly what he brings. From a roster construction standpoint, Kadri solves the second-line center problem immediately. You could move Kasper Kapanen to the wing or drop him to third-line center, giving Montreal incredible depth down the middle. Suddenly you've got Suzuki and Kadri as your top two centers, and you're matching up beautifully against any team in the league. And the offensive production is still there. 32 points in 42 games this season. He's not declining offensively. He's still producing at a high level while playing that heavy, physical style. Now let's talk about Blake Coleman, because pairing him with Kadri in this deal creates something truly special. We've discussed Coleman extensively as a standalone target, but seeing him as part of a package with Kadri, that's when you realize just how transformative this could be. Coleman brings 2 Stanley Cup rings. He's been through the wars. He knows what it takes to win when the games matter most. The report describes him perfectly. He shows prospects what professional details look like on every shift. That's invaluable for a young team. Imagine this. Kadri on the second line, Coleman on the third line. You just created 2 lines that are absolute nightmares to play against. Relentless forechecking, constant hits, playoff experience, and the ability to contribute offensively. Teams would hate playing against Montreal. You're not just adding skill or depth. You're changing the entire identity of the organization. You're going from a fast, skilled team that gets pushed around in the playoffs to a team that can play any style necessary to win. You want to play fast and skilled? Montreal can do that with Suzuki and Caulfield. You want to grind it out and get physical? Here come Kadri and Coleman. That versatility is what wins championships. The report makes an important distinction that I want to emphasize. This isn't about cutting corners. This is about accelerating maturity. Montreal has cap space. They've got an excess of future draft picks. They're in a position where they can spend some of that capital to bring in veterans without compromising the long-term plan. This is exactly what a smart rebuilding team should do when they're ahead of schedule. You don't just keep accumulating picks and prospects forever. At some point, you have to recognize that your young core is ready to compete, and you need to surround them with the veteran support necessary to win now. The Canadiens are at that point. They're in third place in the Atlantic. They're exceeding expectations. The young stars are producing, but they need that final piece, that veteran presence that can guide them to the pressure of a playoff race and teach them how to win when the games get ugly. Kadri and Coleman are exactly that. But here's the challenge. Montreal isn't the only team interested. The report specifically mentions that other competitors, like the Devils or Red Wings, are also circling. This is going to be a bidding war, and if Hughes wants both players, he's going to have to pay a premium. What would that cost look like? We're probably talking multiple draft picks, possibly a prospect or two, and maybe even a roster player to make the money work. That's not cheap. But when you're getting two proven playoff performers who can fundamentally change your team's identity, it might be worth it. And let's talk about the money for a second, because this is where it gets tricky. Kadri makes $6.5 million through 2028. Coleman makes $5.5 million with one more year after the season. That's $12 million in combined cap hit. Montreal has the space to absorb that, but it's a significant commitment. The question is whether Hughes is willing to make that commitment. Is he ready to go all in on this core right now? Is he confident enough in Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, and the young defense to say, yes, we're ready to compete for a Stanley Cup, and we need these veterans to get us there? Based on the report, it sounds like management is pushing him in that direction. The pressure from above suggests that ownership and upper management believe this team is ready to win now, and they want Hughes to make the moves necessary to make that happen. If this deal goes through, the locker room changes overnight. You go from a young, talented team learning how to win to a team with championship pedigree and playoff experience throughout the lineup. You go from getting pushed around to being the team that does the pushing. And can we talk about the irony of Nazem Kadri becoming a fan favorite in Montreal? The guy who spent years as public enemy number one in this city, suddenly becoming the beloved villain who protects Caulfield and Suzuki? That's the kind of redemption arc that writes itself. That's the kind of story that makes sports incredible. The Canadiens are done being nice. They're done being the young, skilled team that gets bullied in the playoffs. If this deal happens, they're announcing to the entire league that they're ready to fight, ready to compete, and ready to do whatever it takes to win. Management wants to see blood in their eyes. They want to see that killer instinct. And Kadri and Coleman bring exactly that. What do you think, folks? Should Kent Hughes pull the trigger on this package deal and bring both Kadri and Coleman to Montreal? Is it worth the cost in picks and prospects to fundamentally change the team's identity? Would you be willing to embrace Nazem Kadri as a Canadian after years of hating him as a Leaf? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to smash that like button, because if this deal happens, it's going to be one of the biggest stories of the trade deadline, and we're going to be here covering every single development as it unfolds.